and see just who ended up where. And the great surprise was the fact that Peter Brock recorded a stunning time of 55.96 seconds, the first man to ever go beneath 56 seconds around this track, and taking his first pole position since Sandown, February 95. Bay Holden Commodore, 55.96 for Brock. Great time. Dick Johnson alongside him at 56.04 in the Shell Ultra Ford Sierra. On row 2, we'll have last year's winner of this event, John Bow, car number 18, 56.08. Tony Long, Tui's 1000 winner, car number 25 at 56.28. From row 3, position 5, a tremendous time from Andrew Bagnall from New Zealand in the Ford Sierra. In fact, Sierra's 1 through 9 on the grid at the moment. Bagnall at 56.88. Colin Bond driving a car that won Bathurst last year, the car that Ken Matthews drove last weekend, position 6, car 4 at 57.3. From position 7, a tremendous drive from Mobile Team newcomer Brad Jones, car 105 at 57.34. Alan Moffat back on the track after disasters during the week. We'll talk about that later. Position 8, 57.36. From 9, Andrew Madecki, a troubled practice of 57.5. The first of the non-Fords, Jimmy Richards, position 10, Nissan Skyline Turbo, 57.86. And then his then car number 30, Glenn Seaton, 58.02. My apologies. Then his teammate George Fury in position 12, Nissan Skyline Turbo at 58.3. Neville Crichton in the second of the Benson and Hedges Ford Sierra, position 13 at 58.8. The first of the Commodores, the Borough Pairs entry, Chris Lamb, position 14, 59.98. And Chris was the last driver to break under the 1 minute barrier. Then we had Graham Lusty, position 15 at 61.2.
And what a race we have set. Round 2 of the Shell Australian Touring Car Championship. Dick Johnson and Peter Brock on the front row. Time to go racing, and they are. And in fact, it's Dick Johnson who just slams it into gear and smokes them off the line.
Yeah, Brock made a shocking start. One of the cars has gone off onto the grass already. And Peter clutched, the wheels spun, and then it really snagged itself and then lit off again. But he's a long, long way back from Dick Johnson. It's a real crush to the first corner, but Johnson has greeted the pack.
Yeah, but he's got up alongside of him, I think, coming down the back straight for the first time. That could be Alan Moffat's ANZ that we saw out on the grass. Okay, down the back chute, and it's Dick Johnson just leading. Peter Brock's made up all that ground. Johnny Bauer sits back there in third spot. Then going through is Colin Bond.
I'm sorry, Mike, it was the ANZ car that came off to the side of the circuit, maybe a transmission failure. And Tony Longhurst in strife as well.
Yes, it hasn't got off the line at all. Tony Longhurst in the Benson and Hedges Sierra.
And officials scattering off the track as the cars come round to pass that point again.
Yellow flags out now as Dick Johnson will lead them across the start-finishing line. Still clear. There you can see. Well, that is not the best spot in the world to be parked for Tony Longhurst. In fact, I think it is.
Johnson's under threat here as Brock closes in under brakes. And John Bow goes roaring up into the back of Brock.
Gives him a tap in the tail.
Really had to lock it up and lurch in and try and save himself from nailing the back of the mobile car.
So the Shell cars 1-3 at this stage. Peter Brock in the Mobile Sierra runs in second spot down through the sweeper on the way down the back straight. Johnson comfortably clear of Peter Brock and Bow. Then a gap back to Colin Bond being the next one.
Looks like it could be a good scrap, this one, with 4 cars buying into it. Not too far adrift from these guys are the 2 Nissans, Richards and Fury.
And up front, Johnson's a handy leader now, but Bow right on the tailpipe of Peter Brock.
Through Coca-Cola curve. Bond able to fend off the challenge from Andrew Bagnall, and Brad Jones doing a good job in the second of the Brockmobiles.
Watch also as this race wears on, because I have no question that the Nissans will come through the field as life in the tyre lane gets a bit ugly for some of the Sierras, particularly those who've burned up rubber early on.
And you can't see it, but I can tell you Alan Moffat making the long and lonely walk back to the pits after having failed basically to get off the grid.
That's not the first time for Alan at Symmons Plains, when they overcooked, as I recall, the Mazda on one day by putting a skirt on the front of it to try and build up some heat, and they did just that. The thing boiled on the line and barely got away. Once again, Brad Jones. Little pressure on Hare down on the inside. Good pass on Andrew Bagnall. A youngster with a big future.
These cars, as we mentioned last week, weekend from the Rouse stable. They ran last year in Caliber colours. Did very well in the British Touring Car Championship, and Andy Rouse, in fact, in the car that Brock is driving, won the Silverstone TT. Colin Bond's been doing a little bit of development work on this car. Peter Brock in second place here in the 05 car, and the second of the Shell Sierras in third position, John Bowe. Dick Johnson just spring away a little bit, and I'll start to get some times on these guys and see how hard they're pushing in the early stages. What I can tell you is the gap from Dick Johnson back to Peter Brock is 1.6 seconds. So Dick's just been able to take a little bit of the pressure off himself now in the first few laps of the event, after having to work pretty hard with Peter Brock there in the first couple of laps. The gap from Bowe in third position back to Colin Bond in fourth. It's already quite large because we can see Bond coming underneath the Dunlop Bridge on the straight as these guys turn left at the hairpin. It's 7.9 seconds already.
They take off down through the back sweeper. There's Johnson disappearing. Brock, Bowe is the next one back behind him. And then we'll have a look at the gap back to the second group with Colin Bond. Brad Jones in there as well, Andrew Bagnall. There's Jimmy Richards in the Nissan Skyline, the GTSR Turbo. He's been gaining on that group.
Madecki has got past Brad Jones, so Madecki now working onto the back of Colin Bond. Jim Richards.
The Nissan's wanting for horsepower, and this is the track where they can't afford that disadvantage. But Jim will wring out every ounce that he can out of this car to try and stay in touch with the front-running cars, and in the hope that maybe it will start to rain, which will advantage him. And just awaiting perhaps a mishap up front.
Dulux Auto Colour race cam from Colin Bond looking back towards Andrew Madecki. Listen how gently Colin has to use the throttle. Gently, gently, then whacks it when he gets into a straight line. And that is the big question mark for all of the runners today, and pretty well all of the cars. It's a circuit that tends to really destroy the working side tyres, the right-hand side. And while yesterday it was a blast to see who could sort of reach spaceship speed, today it's a go for conservative running. Look at this shot on the inside as Madecki forces a way through. Good passing manoeuvre from Madecki. Now Bondi comes back, has a glance in the mirror. He knows that Jones and Bagnall aren't too close, so that means he can concentrate on Andrew Madecki.
Madecki's got him outgunned.
Great pitch there from the Dulux Auto Colour race cam as we go down to the end of the back straight towards the left-hander. And Colin Bond trying to stick with Andrew Madecki, the Kenwood Sierra. Andy hasn't had the best of starts to the championship so far. Last week we saw him come through the field at Amaroo Park, and he's doing exactly the same here today at Symmons Plains in round 2. Getting it a tad sideways, coming out of there beneath the bridge on the run up to the hairpin turn.
Race leader Dick Johnson.
In fact, the sand trap down here with Matt Wacker tangling up with George Fury. And damage to the front left-hand side of Fury's car, flat left front. Wacker goes behind the pit wall, front right-hand corner of his Commodore looking a bit average.
Here is our race leader, defending Australian Touring Car Champ, Dick Johnson.
He's got exactly 2 seconds on Peter Brock, who's drawn away a little bit now from John Bowe. In fact, it's more than just a little bit.
Yep. There's one chunk, Yokohama. Checking out the damage there. Fresh wheel and rubber goes on.
Okay, let's take a look at those placings. And Dick Johnson, the race leader at the moment, with a healthy 2-second gap over Peter Brock, but he is closing. John Bowe in third position. Further back in fourth, we have Andrew Madecki in car number 6. And rounding out the top 5 on the Caltex race score is Colin Bond.
Lap 17, round 2, the Shell Australian Touring Car Championship from Symmons Plains in Tasmania. Brad Jones and Andrew Bagnall still scrapping midfield at this stage of the race.
Let's go down to the pits with Richard Hay.
Thank you, Neil. Well, tragedy for 2 runners at the start of today's race, Tony Longhurst and Alan Moffat. Tony Longhurst problem, I should tell you, was that the discs on the car welded to the brake pads, and he burnt the clutch out on the start line. Alan Moffat, what happened to you?
Well, I didn't want to add to that complication and drive straight into him. I had two choices. Stop myself, which would have been absolutely useless. There was a gap between Tony and the wall, and I just touched the wall, and I mean about that much, and buckled my front wheel, gave me an instant puncture.
It just about capped a fairly awful week for you, didn't it?
Well, we passed it around more than in the last 7 days or 8 days than we have in the last whole year, so it's well and truly ready for battle now.
There's Glenn Seaton running back in the pack today. Great debut for the Peter Jackson Sierra team at Amaroo Park last weekend. Putting a lot of development Ks into this car.
So when they get back to Melbourne next week, they're going to put their heads down on the dyno and start to put in some pretty hard work to come up with some answers before they go to round 3 at Lakeside. But even listening to the car or standing and watching the car from the pit lane, you can see quite comfortably that it's slower in a straight line than, say, the cars of Johnson, Brock, Bow and company.
Here's the Dulux race cam as we look out the rear of Colin Bond's Caltech Sierra. And the man closing on him is Brad Jones in the 105 Mobile Sierra, past Chris Lambden in the Bow Repairs Group A Commodore. And I think it's young Bradley who in fact is closing on Bondi, getting closer lap after lap.
Bond is currently 5th, Jones 6th and 7th.
Beneath the Dunlop Bridge, heading up to the hairpin corner now. There's Chris Lambden coming through. Bagnall back a spot behind them.
Back at the front of the race, 3.3 seconds is the gap between race leader Dick Johnson and Peter Brock in second spot.
And it's 0.7 seconds from Brock back to Bow. And Dick Johnson is about to put another lap on George Fury, who's pitted a new front left fitted. So he goes down 2 laps on the race leader. There's Jones, former Mitsubishi Rally Art driver. He's done a good job. Just rounded up Colin Bond. Came out of there nice and square, got his power to the ground. Moves up a spot to 5th. So it's an excellent drive from him. Andrew Madecki in the foreground in 4th place. So 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th we can see on screen there. Take a Dulux race cam and see whether Bondi has an answer. Brad's car just pulling away a little bit in a straight line.
Jones is in the pit. He was in 5th position, Brad Jones. Well, it was a very cursory look under the bonnet.
I think it was a belt.
The gloves are off. That's the end of the day for Jones.
Disappointment for him after an excellent drive. So it shuffles Colin Bond back into 5th. So Andrew Madecki 4th, Colin Bond 5th, Andrew Bagnall 6th. And there is the first of the Holden Commodores in the field, the Borough Pairs entry, Chris Lambden. The car that Peter Brock took to victory in the 1987 James Hardy 1000. Since then it's been up-spec'd, and Chris Lambden running it last year at the Tooheys 1000 with Tasmanian driver Kerry Bailey.
Well, one of the motor racing press, Chris Lambden, put together a deal with Bow Repairs to enter Group A touring car racing. He's been making a good fist of it too.
He's in position 12 at the moment.
He's the only one.
Oh, John Bow in the pits. He dropped a little bit from Peter Brock, which was something of a surprise. So that's going to bring Andrew Madecki up into 3rd, Colin Bond to 4th, Andrew Bagnall to 5th. I wonder what that's all about.
I don't know. They've been in the
They've
pits
changed both fronts.
30-odd seconds. So it was certainly not a quick stop. And oh, did you see start as Bow fishtailed through the gate and back onto the track.
On the subject of Holden, spoke with Larry Perkins during the week, and he's announced his plans for 89. He'll be running his Group A Commodore in selected Touring Car Championship events.
We're past the halfway mark in this 1 hour second round of the Touring Chip.
And then he hopes to run 2 cars in all the long distance races, Sandown, Bathurst and beyond. And he was due to have a run last night, Oscar racing, until Christopher Dean turned the Commodore into a short wheelbase number. But there's some chance that maybe Larry will be seen in his own Oscar Commodore a little bit later on. So that's something to look forward to for Holden fans.
Certainly is.
John Bow trying to make up lost ground with that pit stop. Johnson continues to lead the race from Brock, Wadecki, Bond, Bagnall. Then Jim Richards, Glenn Seaton and John Bow. So he's back on the track in 7th position.
Information that we had from the pits was that the fact that Johnny Bow had a tyre that deflated on him,
and they took the opportunity to change both fronts.
Dick Johnson to Peter Brock is now 4.3 seconds.
So half race distance gone, and Johnson has a comfortable lead at this stage over Brock, who just can't bridge the gap. Any pressure that John Bow might have mounted on the top 2 faded when he had to make that compulsory pit stop. Left now to Andrew Wadecki.
I noticed that Brock was just pumping his brakes a little bit down the back straight that last time through. So brake pad wear will certainly start to play a part in this race from about this point on.
Bow coming up on Glenn Seaton at the moment. He'll wring the neck out of the second Sierra now for the second part of the race. Wouldn't be happy with having to take time out in the pits for a deflated tyre.
Peter Brock has got a 28-second gap over Andrew Wadecki in 3rd place.
It's a strong buffer. Let's check out what's happening in the pits. Richard Hay.
Well, I should tell you that John Bow's problem was a punctured tyre, nothing more serious than that. But Brad Jones, we were talking yesterday, and after the Oscar race, you said you'd be delighted to finish 3rd. After Bow's problem, you would have been 4th. Were it not for that problem, what was it?
We broke a timing belt. It's just one of those things, I guess. I was taking 4th gear down the back straight, and the lights came on, everything stopped very quickly, so I cruised around the pits, and the guy said, you know, bad luck, we've done a belt, that's it for the day. So it's one of those unfortunate things.
The Brock Sierras seem to be going better and better and better. Peter's car all right as far as you know?
Yeah, Peter's car's fine. It's doing great, as you can see. My car's feeling just as well, well, up until it broke. The cars are really credit to the guys that put in a lot of hard work since we got them, and it's showing today.
37-ish, 38 laps down, something like that.
Terry Sawyer, car number 33, Toyota's Search for a Star. Terry is one of the stars.
Well, she picked up $5 in the Oscar race at Calder yesterday. That wasn't too shabby. This is the lady that won the first ever Oscar race held at Calder. In fact, she won about $15,000 total prize money in Oscar racing last season.
It's a little different, the Symmons Plains circuit to running the Oval at Calder. But she's one of some great talent that we'll be seeing in guest driving in the Toyota during the course of the season. Brooke Tatnall, one of the leading lights of the sprint car set. Terry, let's take a look at Terry. She's 18 years of age, comes from Melbourne, driving today in the Toyota Corolla. 1981 Australian sub-junior karting champion, second in the Victoria Junior titles, 81, 82, 83, and so forth and so forth. Victorian Karter of the Year in 85, and winner of the very first Oscar race. And that's the lady we're following today, driving the Toyota. Oh, what a feeling for Terry Sawyer. She's had a big weekend, running the bowl at Thunderdome last night, and then, of course, fronting up in the Toyota. And we may even see her at Bathurst, depending on how the other drivers turn out now.
The idea with the Toyota Star Search program is to give 8 young drivers an opportunity to have a go at the big time. 8 different drivers, 8 different locations, and the top 2 drivers will be given the chance to drive in this year's Tooheys 1000. A great break from Toyota for the youngsters in Australian motorsport. And she's chasing her teammate John Faulkner in the number 32 car.
So Dick Johnson, car number 17, stretches it out going down the back straight, still leading from 0.5 Brock. Andrew Madecki in car number 6.
5 seconds approximately now, the break between Johnson and Brock, first to second.
Then, of course, Colin Bond, car number 4, and Andrew Bagnall, car number 8, that's been running in there. There's Glenn Seaton in the Peter Jackson Sierra. There's the speed difference between the little Toyota class car and the outright running Sierra Ford of Glenn Seaton, car number 30.
What this does mean is the point situation in the championship is very interesting. But let's take a look at the Caltex race score situation, and Dick Johnson is still clearly the leader with about a 5-second gap over Peter Brock in second. In third place, we have Andrew Madecki. That's been a great drive. In fourth, car number 4, Colin Bond in the Caltex entry. And rounding out the top 5, car number 8, Andrew Bagnall. Back in a moment.
Back at Symmons Plains Motor Raceway. The sole remaining Benson and Hedges here, driven by Neville Crichton, runs 9th in the field at the moment. Neville's had a pretty fair run today in the number 20 car. Frank Gardner, Tony Longhurst running a 2-car team. It was bad luck that Tony didn't get off the start line. Neville at least keeping the profile up there, 9th on the track at the moment.
Tell you what is interesting, this move here at the moment. There goes John Bowe coming back up through the field like you wouldn't believe, to 4th position, round the outside of Colin Bond. Dulux Auto Colour Race Cam shows the story. And with some new rubber on the front and plenty of grit and determination, Bowe wants his placing back. And at the moment, he's chasing Andrew Madecki. He's only 3.4 seconds behind him. That's an amazing charge.
Going past one of the lusty boys, running the Steelmark Commodore. Yes, you're right there. He has really rung the neck of the second Sierra for the Shell team at the moment. Coming up over the hump and down to the left-hander.
Well, the gap between Johnson and Brock has remained pretty static. It's 5 odd seconds. Bowe is really going for it at the moment. There's Madecki in 3rd, Bowe in 4th, Bond in 5th.
So Dick Johnson, car 17, still our race leader from Peter Brock in 0.5. Andrew Madecki in car number 6 is 3rd, but closing on him and all over him at the moment is certainly John Bowe in car number 18.
I tell you what, it's not inconceivable that Johnson and possibly even Brock could lap everybody in this race, because the gap from Peter Brock back to Andrew Madecki is enormous. I've got the watch running. It's out to 23, 24 seconds, and he's still got half the track to come by yet. I'll give it to you when it eventually happens. This is John Bowe making an assault now for 3rd place.
Local spectators love this. Sits in the draft now of Andrew Madecki in the Kenwood Blast Dynamics car. Switches to the outside in the second Shell Sierra car number 18. Tries to out-drag him down to the corner here and pull across the front of him. Madecki goes in tight, locks a brake doing that.
Got him.
And that's just a beautiful pass from John Bowe. Very, very determined here today for a rather partisan home crowd.
Well, he's 40 seconds behind Peter Brock, John Bowe. So that's been an incredible charge through the field.
Here's the man running 14th at the moment. Gerald Kay. And Gerald has been a regular on the Australian Touring Car Championship circuit for a number of years. It's a long haul over here to Tasmania from the mainland, just to, as a lot of people would think, to make up the field, but it's more than that involved for guys like Gerald Kay, the Lusty brothers and so forth, Chris Lambert. They're there competing as privateers. Gerald doing a good job out there in the Jag parts Commodore.
Should mention, Mike, that Andrew Madecki pitted a moment ago for about 35-40 seconds to take on new front tyres, and he's dropped out of the top 5. So the revised order is now Dick Johnson 6 seconds ahead of Peter Brock, then John Bowe about 35 seconds behind Peter Brock, then Colin Bond in 4th place, and now moving into the top 5 Jim Richards, although he's not very far away from being lapped by race leader Dick Johnson. Dulux Auto Colour race cam, Colin Bond at the wheel. And about to come through the tight left-hander past the pits where he'll get a pit signal. You can see him wrestling a fairly slippery car this late in the race. Into 5th gear as he goes down a fairly long straight here, and then they make a run into the tightest hairpin in Australian motor racing, where he goes right back to 1st gear, 180 degrees. And the big squirt down the back straight, which has got a long right-hander. He's already been passed by John Bowe. Graham Lusty, car number 21. Steel mark Holden Commodore. As Mike said before, many of the privateers up and down the country at great expense. He's in 13th position at the moment, doing a fine job. Often we don't get a chance to show some of the guys back in the field, but with them spreading out a little bit at the head, we thought we'd go back and take a look, and he's doing an excellent job at the moment. He's the second of the Commodores behind Chris Lambden. Oops, almost running out of road there. And he's already a couple of laps down on Dick Johnson. So give you an idea again of that revised order after a few changes. Dick Johnson 6 seconds out, car number 17 in front of Peter Brock, car 05. John Bowe, car 18 in 3rd. Colin Bond, car 4 in 4th. And Jim Richards, car 2, now moving up to 5th. And Andrew Madecki trying to come back through the field, much the same as John Bowe did, after taking on some new front tyres. And I don't think that Brock is going to be able to catch Johnson, although it's been a superlative drive. One of the Toyotas, incidentally, is speared into the grass over near the sheep. Oh, hang on, that's everywhere. It's right up on the other end of the circuit. To go in this race. Peter Brock threading his way through traffic and doing everything in his power now to try and catch Dick Johnson, and he's really struggling a little bit with some of the traffic.
There's Lusty sweeping through beneath the Dunlop Bridge. So it's been, I wouldn't say the easiest of races today for Dick Johnson. He's had to keep the pressure on. Let's take a look at the Caltex race score as we pick up on the top 5. Dickie Johnson of Queensland leads the parade, 05. Peter Brock runs in 2nd. Great drive, car number 18, John Bowe in 3rd place. In 4th, of course, the driver of car number 4, Colin Bond, and rounding out the 5 for Nissan, car number 2, Jimmy Richards.
Back at Symmons Plains, Dick Johnson, the race leader, behind George Fury here, although George is a couple of laps down after his disaster early in the race with Matt Wacker. He's about to put a lap on Jim Richards, who just lost some ground in the break, was in 5th, and Glenn Seaton has now come up to 5th place. The interesting thing is that Dick Johnson's times have come back to 60 seconds plus now in the closing stages of this race. So tyres and brakes are really starting to feel it after almost an hour of racing. Johnson still about 6 odd seconds out from Peter Brock. I'll check the gap for you once again. Jim Richards, I'd say, is about to be lapped by Dick Johnson, which is an incredible switch about from last weekend, although there's no question that the Nissan's a more comfortable vehicle at Amaru Park than it is at Symmons Plains. Actually, that gap Johnson to Brock has now come down again to 5.1 seconds. So I'd say Peter's throwing absolutely everything he can at Dick now, with only a few minutes to go. So the order: Dick Johnson, Peter Brock, Brock, John Bowe, Colin Bond in 4th, Glenn Seaton in 5th, Jim Richards in 6th, and here's the car that you just had a glimpse of in front of Dick Johnson. Andrew Bagnall, incidentally, just went off the boil all of a sudden about 10 minutes ago, and that was why he dropped back down through the order. We don't have any idea of the problem. We've endeavoured to find out, but nobody seems to know, including his crew at the moment. Maybe it's tyres or boost has fallen away on that car. Actually, Glenn Seaton, I think, is moving up and passing Andrew Madecki now, so Seaton a bit of a late charger in this race. Oh, I should say Colin Bond. My apologies. So there we look at Dulux race cam. Seaton now moves up into 4th place, and he was in no man's land 30-40 minutes ago, and he's really come good at the end.
Well, I think he conserved in the first half of the race. Everyone else was a little around sideways and so forth. Made life a little easier for Seaton as we take our race cam in the Peter Jackson Sierra, car number 30, to the hairpin corner at Brambles. He heads off down the back straight.
Just a little bit of rain falling, but I don't think it's going to do much. And that's the view from Colin Bond's car chasing Glenn Seaton.
We've had almost 4 seasons of weather here today at Symmons Plains. The threat of a downpour just prior to the start. Little drizzle during the race. Our race leader, of course, is Dick Johnson of Queensland, all going together nicely in round 2 here today at Symmons Plains. Still opening that gap a little over Peter Brock. He comes up now on Jimmy Richards in car number 2 to put a lap on Jim. As you said, far cry from last weekend at Sydney's Amaroo Park. This is quite a horsepower circuit, and the Nissans have felt the pinch here today at the expense of the very, very strong-running Sierras.
Lakeside presents an interesting layout, though. We'll see some fireworks up there, no doubt. Richo really clinging onto his place there. But this will give you an idea of the difference in grunt between the cars. Just watch the gap open up down this back straight. Lakeside's probably more suited to the Nissans, the way the car handles. Look at the gap that Dick Johnson enjoys after that sprint down the back straight.
Johnson coming out of Coca-Cola corner. The sprint down. There's Neville Crichton just ahead of him, about to put the lap on Neville. Pretty tight through there, just the same. Johnson swings to the outside. Oh, that was a move and a half.
He decided to back away from it. Yep. There's no point with a 5-second gap over Peter Brock trying to plunge past Neville in the last couple of minutes. I'm just going to double check that gap from Johnson to Brock again. That's 3.9 seconds. Now I know why Dick's starting to
pick the pace
get a little bit twitchy. And Johnson finds himself in the middle of a bunch of traffic at the moment. That's not helping his cause, but then it's not going to help Peters either when he gets around there. He's kept the hammer really on him all the way to the flag. It sounds easy when we sit up here and dismiss it as, oh, it's just 3 or 4 seconds, but that's not very much. There's Brock in the background. We reckon there's maybe a lap or 2 to go. And they do 50-odd second laps, so I think we're going to get another couple of laps out of this race. It would have to be a miracle if Peter could get up and actually do anything. Mind you, he's come from miracle positions before, hasn't he?
Yep. Out of Brambles' hairpin and working his way down the back straight.
Double check that gap again from Johnson to Brock. And it's 4 seconds.
Can't see that changing. There's Colin Bond, so Dick is going to come up and put a lap on Colin Bond before the finish of this race.
It's going to be touch and go on a checkered flag here.
Be fairly close, I would think. Everything has fallen into place for Dickie Johnson, coming up to the pit corner, about to sweep out of there. And here it is, the checkered flag going out for Dick Johnson as he sweeps across the start-finishing line. And he will pick up the win here today at Symmons Plains. Great for Dick Johnson and the Shell team. Waiting for the gap to show you Peter Brock come through in 0.5, who will pick up the second spot.
He was 4.6 seconds behind.
What a great finish, too, for John Bowe in car number 18, who will pick up third after that pit stop and coming storming back through the pack. Let's have a look on the Caltex race score, how they've finished in round 2 in the Australian Touring Car Championship. The win going to Dick Johnson in car number 17. Second place officially goes to Peter Brock in the Mobile Sierra 05, and third to the second of the Johnson Sierras, John Bowe in car number 18.